Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking into something pretty fascinating, actually. This unexpected dance between creativity and, well, restriction.
Right.
And our guide for this is going to be Cole Porter. I mean, just a master of those witty, sophisticated lyrics everyone knows.
And what's so interesting and what our source really digs into is how the censorship back then, early to mid 20th century, that whole environment actually shaped his genius.
Yeah,
We're talking the Hays Code in Hollywood, which was huge, plus radio decency standards, even Broadway kind of censoring itself.
exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how Porter managed all that, all those rules, all those don'ts. How did he work around them? And, what brilliant techniques did he come up with because of it?
Okay, yeah, let's get into that.
Yeah.
A good starting point, our source suggests, is looking at the big shift around 1934. That's when the Hays Code really started being strictly enforced. And you see a definite change in Porter's writing, before and after.
Oh, for sure. It's a real contrast, isn't it? Before things got super strict, his lyrics could be, well, pretty direct, like, let's misbehave from 28.
Yeah.
He just says it. There's something wild about you, child. It's so contagious. Let's be outrageous. Let's misbehave. I mean, zero ambiguity there.
Not at all. That was the pre-code era, right? Our source reminds us there was more freedom then, talking about sex, social stuff. Songs like I'm a Gigolo also fit that mold, tackling themes that would later be much more difficult to address openly.
Right.
But then you get to 1934, a song like Anything Goes. It's still witty, still got that social commissary.
Yeah, like times have changed. And we've often rewound the clock since the Puritans got a shock when they landed on Plymouth Rock. It's fun.
It is, but you can kind of feel the boundaries tightening a bit, can't you?
Yeah.
What was considered acceptable was definitely shifting. And our source points out this wasn't happening in a vacuum. There was this growing moral panic sort of building up.
Right, before the code really clamped down, you had pre-code Hollywood, which was, pretty suggestive sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Think Mae West, her whole persona was built on innuendo.
Totally.
And films like Babyface or Red-Headed Woman, they were pretty bold about sexuality, challenging norms. It's kind of amazing looking back.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, well, that understandably freaked out some groups, religious organizations, civic groups.
Yeah, and then you had scandals, Fatty Arbuckle, William Desmond Taylor's murder that just added fuel to the fire, lots of pressure for the government to step in and regulate movies.
So the studios, trying to head that off, basically they formed their own group, the MPPDA, Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, back in 22.
Right, and they brought in Will Hays. He had this conservative image. The idea was to clean things up, restore public trust.
But initially it was more guidelines, right? Not super strict enforcement.
Exactly. More voluntary. But our source makes it clear that by 1934, things had heated up enough that they needed something stronger, mandatory enforcement. That's when the Production Code Administration, the PCA people called it the Hays Office, was set up.
And that office had real power.
Oh, absolutely. They reviewed scripts, they reviewed finished films. Nothing got distributed without their seal of approval.
Wow.
So that kicked off the really strict Hays Code era, and the rules were, pretty comprehensive. No swearing, no nudity, no miscegenation in interracial relationships, no suggestive dancing, definitely no homosexuality shown positively, no making fun of religion. It was a long list.
A very long list.
Yeah, and our source stresses that Porter, right in his prime creative years, was dealing with all of that, plus radio networks vetting lyrics, plus Broadway producers trying to avoid trouble themselves. It was like navigating a minefield.
Which just makes his ability to still be witty and suggestive even more incredible. So let's look at some examples. Our source flags Love for Sale from 1930 is maybe the most dramatic censorship case he faced early on.
Yeah, and what's really interesting there is the controversy wasn't even about, dirty words. It was the theme, the feeling of it.
Right.
It's sung from the perspective of a prostitute. Old love, new love, every love but true love. And originally it was sung by a white performer, Catherine Crawford.
And that caused a stir.
A big one. Our source says the backlash was immediate. So the producers moved the song, they put it in the Cotton Club, and had Elizabeth Welch, a black singer, perform it instead.
Huh. So they didn't change the words?
Nope. Our source makes a great point here. It was censorship. By changing the context, changing the performer, putting it in what was seen as a more exotic setting with a black singer, somehow made it seem less threatening, maybe, to the mainstream white audience. It really shows how censorship can get tangled up with race and social ideas.
That's fascinating. And even though some radio stations banned it, the song lived on, right?
Yeah.
Became a jazz standard.
It did. And our source argues this whole experience was key for Porter. It taught him the power of being indirect. He learned you could still say a lot without saying it outright.
Okay, what about I get a kick out of you? That's 1934, so right when the code is tightening.
Yes, perfect example. The original lyric, as our source notes, was, "Some get a kick from cocaine."
Ah. Yeah, that wouldn't fly into the Hays Code.
Definitely not. Drug use was a big no-no. So they forced a change. The line became, "Some like the perfume in Spain."
Perfume in Spain, that feels weaker.
Right. Our source mentions Porter apparently hated the change. Felt it messed up the rhythm, wasn't as funny. But it shows exactly what forced substitution does. You keep the rhyme, keep the meter, but lose that edge. But here's the interesting part our source points out. After that, Porter seemed to shift. He started using more metaphor, more implication, if he alluded to drugs at all. No more direct mentions. So again, the limitation kind of pushed him toward being more subtle.
Like he had to invent a code. And the musical Anything Goes, you mentioned that earlier, when that went from Broadway to Hollywood in '36, it got cleaned up quite a bit too, didn't it?
Oh yeah. The original stage version had lines making fun of modern trends like, "Good authors too, who once knew better words, now only use four-letter words, writing prose."
That's pretty cheeky.
A bit too cheeky for Hollywood, apparently.
Yeah.
Our source says even that comment about vulgarity was seen as too vulgar itself.
Wow.
So yeah, lots of lyrics got scrubbed. Some songs were just dropped entirely, replaced with safer ones. The satire was really toned down.
Porter wasn't happy about that, I bet.
He had that great quote about it. "They did everything to my script but rewrite it. Only the title remained."
Ouch.
Yeah. But our source suggests this pushed him further into that strategy of using layers, puns, literary references, loads of innuendo, stuff that might sail over the censors' heads, but his audience would get.
Right, the art of suggestion. He really mastered that. Double meanings became his superpower, almost. Like an, let's do it, let's fall in love.
Exactly. On the surface, it's just about nature, right? Birds do it, bees do it, even educated fleas do it. Seems innocent enough.
But everyone knows what do it really means there.
Uh-huh. And our source points out, how could the radio censors ban that? What exactly would they object to? The language was just slippery enough.
Yeah, plausible deniability. And let's misbehave, too, even earlier. We're all alone, no chaperone can get our number. Using misbehave in that playful, suggested way.
It's all about that coded language, the rhymes that wink at you, the double meanings. Our source calls it plausible deniability. If the censors called him out, they'd risk looking silly, like they had dirty minds themselves.
Clever. What about I'm a Gigolo from 29? That seems pretty direct, too.
It does, yeah. I'm a gigolo born to love 1,000 millionaires. It's definitely touching on male prostitution, transactional sex.
So how did that get by?
Well, our source suggests maybe the word gigolo itself felt a bit foreign, exotic, maybe satirical enough that it didn't seem like a serious endorsement. He used irony, ambiguity, cloaking the taboo topic in sophistication.
And it wasn't just sex. Our source talks about how he managed to weave in queer subtext, too, which was definitely forbidden by the code.
Yeah, really subtly. Things like writing songs from a female perspective but having a man sing them, or carefully avoiding gendered pronouns like he or she when talking about a lover, and using camp aesthetics that exaggerated theatrical style.
Like in You're the Top, that list of comparisons. You're the nose on the Great Durante. It's over the top, kind of funny.
Exactly. Our source points out that by making the compliment so flamboyant, almost non-erotic in a way, and by not specifying who the object of affection is gender-wise, it sort of confuses the censors. There's no clear illicit relationship to point at.
Very clever. And then there's just pure linguistic brilliance, like in Brush Up Your Shakespeare from Kiss Me, Kate. That line.
Oh, the Coriolanus line. If she says your behavior is heinous, kick her right in the Coriolanus.
Yes. I mean, how did he get away with that?
Pure genius, probably. It's a phonetic pun, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like something else entirely. Our source calls it literary camouflage. It's so clever, so wrapped up in a Shakespeare reference that maybe the censors just missed it or couldn't object without sounding crude themselves. It's just dazzling wordplay.
It really is.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Broadway versus Hollywood earlier. Our source dives into that with Kiss Me, Kate. It did pretty well on stage.
Yeah.
But the 1953 movie version.
That's more sanitized. Yeah. Our source lists some specifics. Songs cut entirely, like Another Opening, Another Show, and Bianca.
Wow.
Too Darn Hot was kept, but they changed the lyrics, took out a reference to the Kinsey Report on sexual behavior. Even Tom, Dick, or Harry got watered down.
So they just chop things out.
Chopped, changed. And they actually added a song from this moment on, which, interestingly, fit the censorship rules much better. It shows how the medium really dictated what was possible.
So Porter had to compartmentalize almost, right? One way for Broadway, another for Hollywood.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
A very strategic way to handle the different levels of restriction. Our source suggests that over time, he got really good at, well, strategic self-censorship. He learned to color inside the lines, but still make it interesting.
Like it's de-lovely, all those made-up words, delightful, delicious, de-lovely.
Yeah, exactly. Suggestive, romantic, but totally G-rated language. Or, well, did you, Eva? It's all gossip and champagne-fueled hints of scandal, but nothing explicit is ever actually said.
So the style got more coded, maybe, but still had that Porter punch.
Yeah, our source thinks so, and points to some less famous examples too, like The Tale of the Oyster, this little satire about wealth and lost innocence that some found a bit too sharp, or Miss Otis Regrets, which is pretty dark and morbid and apparently split the critics. It shows he was always kind of probing those boundaries.
And how did audiences react back then? Was everyone charmed, or were people genuinely shocked?
Oh, it varied hugely. Our source really emphasizes this. What played fine in, say, New York could cause outrage in Boston or other places?
The geography matter.
A lot. You even had regional censorship boards, local groups, banning films based on Porter's shows sometimes. It wasn't one single standard across the country. He was navigating this really fragmented moral landscape.
But his legacy, I mean, it's huge. Did other songwriters pick up on these techniques?
Absolutely. Our source specifically mentions Stephen Sondheim, who apparently really admired how Porter could slip things past the censors with such style and wit.
Hmm.
And even though the Hays Code eventually faded and writers didn't need those techniques in the same way, that kind of cleverness, that craftsmanship, is still admired today, especially in things like cabaret reviews.
So in a weird way, the censorship actually helped him.
Our source definitely makes that argument, that
Sure.
paradoxically, it might have honed his skills, sharpened his artistry, forced him to be more inventive.
It's wild to read some of the actual reviews from the time. Our source quotes the New York Herald Tribune in '35 saying Porter revels in innuendo and thrives on the dangerous edge of decency.
Captures it perfectly, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then the Boston Critic calling Love for Sale a lamentable glorification of street vice. Just completely different takes.
Right. And you had groups like the Catholic Legion of Decency constantly objecting to the movie versions of his shows. He was definitely pushing buttons.
And we already mentioned his quote about anything goes. Only the title remained.
Yeah, you can feel the frustration there. And he also apparently said something like, I can write anything if I'm allowed to write everything. Which really gets at that core tension, right? Between wanting total freedom and dealing with the reality of restriction.
So wrapping it up, our source makes a pretty compelling case that yes, Cole Porter faced a lot of censorship.
Oh, a ton of it.
But instead of shutting him down, it kind of refined his art.
Yeah.
Pushed him towards metaphor, indirection, that incredible wit.
Exactly. He developed this amazing toolkit to say what he wanted to say, just not always directly. He learned how to hide the sharpest blades in velvet, as our source puts it.
Huh. The sharpest blades hidden in velvet. I like that. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How sometimes, maybe, limitations can actually fuel creativity in unexpected ways. Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.